came not only from courage and sacrifice on the beaches, but from a massive supply effort thereafter. So the greatest armada ever assembled was set for the invasion. Eisenhower described it as a great coiled spring, coiled for the moment when its energy would be released and it would vault the English Channel in the greatest amphibious assault ever attempted. For the moment, from Portsmouth and Normandy, good evening.
Guinness, Leo McKern, Lauren Bacall and Jean Moreau in an acclaimed story of loss and reconciliation.
In which one do I get to go in?
Our little moment in history.
A Foreign Field, Sunday at 10:20 on BBC1.
Dame Kirita Kanawha makes a guest appearance and Sir George Sholti conducts a special gala concert on BBC 2 in 10 minutes, live from Prague. The early evening news now on BBC 1 with Andrew Harvey.
President Clinton and the Prime Minister have joined together in paying tribute to British and American servicemen. On a day of events commemorating D-Day, Mr. Clinton spoke of Yanks and Brits working together like family. The Chinook crash, the Royal Ulster Constabulary joined the investigation team. And England's rugby players defy the odds and destroy South Africa. Good evening. President Clinton, on his first official visit here, has joined with the Prime Minister in remembering those who died during the Second World War at a ceremony marking the start of official D-Day events. And this afternoon, the two leaders have been holding talks at Chequers.
From the moment President Clinton arrived to be met by the Prime Minister, the emphasis was on a shared national brotherhood forged in war. A special relationship for which tens of thousands of Americans died in the fight against Nazism. At the American Military Cemetery near Cambridge, the two leaders paid homage at a wall inscribed with the names of those with no known grave, among them Joseph Kennedy, the brother of the former president, and the band leader Glenn Miller. Past flags of the two nations, they walked to where several thousand veterans were gathered for the memorial service. Most were former Air Force personnel who had lost comrades in countless raids over Europe.
Amid the horror, the British looked west for help. Then the Yanks came, deepening one of history's profoundest bonds.
A B-17 dipped in salute to all the airmen, the remembering and the remembered. President and Prime Minister had a working lunch at Chequers. The dominating concern for President Clinton is possible sanctions against North Korea, a country refusing to cooperate with international inspectors sent to see if nuclear fuel has been used to make weapons.
There's still time for North Korea to avoid sanctions actually taking effect if we can work out something on the nuclear inspections. But this is in their hands. I think that clearly sanctions are not any sort of act of war and should not be seen as such.
More talks between the two leaders are expected over the D-Day period. Martin Dawes, BBC News.
In Portsmouth, members of the royal family and thousands of war veterans gathered to attend a garden party in the grounds of General Eisenhower's D-Day headquarters. Despite heavy rain during much of the day, the weather improved enough to allow mass bands to beat retreat before the Queen Mother.
The weather was in tune with history. 24 hours before D-Day's commemoration, the sea off Portsmouth behaved as it did when the invasion fleet assembled. But there was no postponing today's ceremonies. In true English summer tradition, the garden party goers gathered undaunted. A party to symbolize D-Day's planning phase in the grounds of Southwark House, where General Eisenhower issued the final order to launch the invasion. Princess Margaret and 1,000 veterans ignored the weather. In the far distance, the clouds, just as 50 years ago, promised to clear, so the next event got underway in defiance of the elements. 5,000 veterans gathered for a beating retreat at Whale Island. And as the Queen Mother arrived, the rain stopped, while she met a dozen men who'd set off for France for what was called this great adventure. The traditional ceremony followed, with the music and skills of the Allied countries, their bands, their service personnel, their government representatives and their veterans. A day of official commemoration and of special memories. Kate Adey, BBC News, Portsmouth.
And the poor weather continues to affect preparations in Normandy, but forecasters are hopeful that there'll be an improvement for the main ceremonies on Monday. At Arromanches, British military bands spent the afternoon rehearsing for the Queen's visit, despite blustery winds and drizzle. They also took the opportunity to practice for the Queen's arrival. A Range Rover full of stand-in dignitaries made its way slowly across the beach before a woman soldier, taking the part of the Queen, emerged to take the salute. Officers from the Royal Ulster Constabulary have been sent to Western Scotland to work with Strathclyde Police investigating Thursday's helicopter crash. The bodies of all 29 victims who died in the crash on the Mull of Kintyre have been taken to a temporary mortuary.
Down below, devastation, the charred landscape and wreckage of the Chinook helicopter. Most of it is in this area, the point of impact, but some is spread over a square mile of the hillside. It'll be several days before the remains of the helicopter can be moved for closer examination. Still visible, parts of the fuselage and one of the rotor blades. The reason for the crash are still not clear, but the possibilities are being narrowed down.
At this stage, we are quite happy that there's nothing to suggest this has been other than a most unfortunate accident.
This is the hangar where parts of the helicopter will eventually be examined at the tiny RAF base at Machrihanish, 15 miles north of the crash site. The area is still sealed off and is likely to remain so for several days as investigators continue sifting through the wreckage. Stephen Cape, BBC News, Mull of Kintyre.
Lord Thorneycroft, one of the Conservative Party's most distinguished figures of the post-war period, has died. He was 84. Peter Thorneycroft was Chancellor under Harold Macmillan. He resigned in 1958 over public spending increases. Mr Macmillan dismissed it as a little local difficulty. Lord Thorneycroft later became party chairman. His successor, Sir Norman Fowler, today said his work greatly contributed to Mrs Thatcher's first election victory in 1979. The former England cricket captain Graham Gooch has scored a double century in the first test against New Zealand at Trent Bridge. It was Gooch's second double hundred in test matches, and though he was out shortly afterwards for 210, he'd already assured England of a sizable lead. A short while ago, after a break for rain, they were 482 for 6, a lead of 231. England's rugby players have won a memorable victory over South Africa in Pretoria. Fly half Rob Andrews set a new record by scoring 27 points as England won 32-15.
The first major sports event in Nelson Mandela's new South Africa, another historic moment for the new president and every England player eager to play a supporting role. No such decorum after the introductions as England rampaged to a surprisingly one-sided win, inspired largely by the quick thinking and confident kicking of fly half Rob Andrew. But it was England's tactical switch to running rugby which punched holes in the Springboks and led to 2 tries in the first 15 minutes. Tony Underwood's break allowing Ben Clark to muscle his way over for a first international try. Then Andrew himself, sweeping up his own kick to put England into an astonishing 20-0 lead and on course for their first Test win in South Africa since 1972. After the interval, Andre Joubert heavily punished England's complacency, reducing their advantage to just 11 points before Andrew once again came to the rescue. He kicked his 5th penalty, then this drop goal to take his personal tally to 27 points, an English Test record, as his side finished impressive winners. Neil Alton, BBC News.
And that's all for now. The main news and sport is at 5 to 9.
A very good evening to you. Looks like a much better day tomorrow. A little ridge of high pressure pushing its way in, but these weather fronts bringing rain into the west later on. It's been a miserable day today. A lot of showers up in the north, bands of rain down in the south, one just going through London, another one out to the west, and yet more showers pushing their way in. They'll continue to feed their way eastwards, but still a lot of them around, I think, by the middle part of the evening. They will have gone overnight by and large, temperatures dropping to about 6 or 7 degrees. And then tomorrow, a fairly bright start in most places. The exception, I suppose, will be Shetland, where there'll be cloud with some outbreaks of rain. Some rain already coming into southwestern parts of Ireland too, and that pushing its way in through the course of the morning. 1 or 2 showers developing over the Pennines, certainly some showers up in northern parts of Scotland. And then in the afternoon, the outbreaks of rain coming into the western fringes of England and Wales, certainly with the sunshine pushed further and further eastwards. But at least it's going to feel warmer than today, and the winds aren't going to be anywhere near as strong. That's the forecast. Bye for now.
Saturday night on BBC1. At 6:30, Chris Tarrant challenges 2 more teams in pop quiz. At 7, Lex does it in style.
The Archbishop?
Yes, I'm sorry, the Pope had a prior engagement.
Is this the end for Superman? And at 7:45, domestic problems for Eric and Ernie.
I'll have you know that I'm known as a polished performer. Oh, I can believe that. Well, take it off and give us a song.
At 8:15, classic moments from That's Life. And that's followed by the movie at 9:15. The Dream Team are lost in New York.
Anything else I can help you fellas with?
Yeah, could you recommend a good clinical psychiatrist in the neighborhood? We seem to have lost ours.
Saturday night on BBC1.
BBC1 in the North. Now, Saturday Scene with Tony Belmont.
Good evening. A group of executives from a hospital trust in County Durham that's accused of cutting vital services has set off on a trip to California. Their aim to find out more about new methods of treating patients. But one of the area's MPs says the visit is a waste of money because hospitals in the UK already use the same methods. Amanda Goodman reports.
The trip has been organised as part of the planning stage for a new state-of-the-art hospital to be built on the site of Dryburn Hospital in Durham. It's a controversial plan involving the possible closure of the Accident and Emergency Unit at Shotley Bridge. Later tonight, 12 executives will arrive in California at the start of their week-long visit. They say they want to learn more about a scheme called patient-focused care, even though the trust admits hospitals here already operate it. The trip is officially costing £15,000, but the MP for the area says the real cost could be 4 times higher.
I can't see that it's anything but a waste of money. When at Shotley Bridge, people want to know, will there be an accident and emergency unit? Will the basic things that they need be there? And instead, management is sending people to California, which doesn't exactly have a good reputation for healthcare.
The Trust says it wants to ensure its new hospital will be at the forefront of clinical practice by learning from hospitals throughout the world. It says the California trip represents good value for money.
And we apologise for the quality of the pictures in that report. 2 men have been charged in connection with a series of burglaries at stately homes in the region. Operation Border Reaver investigated break-ins at 6 homes, castles and palaces in the north of England and Scotland. One of the men has been charged with burglary at Floors Castle in the Scottish borders. The second man has been charged with handling stolen property. The police say none of the property seized in yesterday's operation has yet been linked to the homes. 2 other men who were arrested have been released. The Liberal Democrats in the north have used their summer conference to attack the Conservatives, With less than a week to go to the European elections, the party's deputy leader, Alan Beath, has accused the Tories of running a dishonest campaign. Chris Eakin has this report.
The setting was down County Hall. The much hoped for prize was success in the European elections. The target was the opposition, or more specifically in this case, the Conservatives.
The Conservative campaign in the European elections, personally led by the Prime Minister, has plumbed new depths of dishonesty. Perhaps it was too much to expect them to mend their ways after the huge tax deceit at the general election. But this time, the public do not have to wait until after the election to find out whether the Conservatives' promises turn out to be false. Their whole campaign is based on the opposite of what they've said, done, and signed up to in Europe.
That was a reference to the British veto in European decision-making and to federalism, on which Mr Beath said the Conservatives flew a two-sided flag, in favour when speaking in Strasbourg, against when speaking at home.
No Prime Minister with any real authority would have spoken about a multi-speed Europe with Britain in the slow lane. The price of this Prime Minister's weakness is the public humiliation of Britain.
And that is all before the final week has really got off the ground. There'll be more to come.
Yorkshire's cricketers have been beaten on the third day of their county championship match at Middlesbrough. They were bowled out before lunch for 121, which left Nottinghamshire a target of 144 to win. Peter Hartley took 2 quick wickets to revive Yorkshire's chances, but David Byas missed this straightforward chance. Jimmy Adams, the West Indian, who used to be the professional with Eppleton in the Durham Senior League, settled down the Notts batting. By the time Mark Robinson trapped Tim Robinson for 38, Notts had moved up to 79 for 3. The Notts eventually won by 5 wickets, with Adams on 40, not out. And rain forced Durham to abandon their game against Warwickshire at Edgbaston. Finally, the weather. Any showers will die out during the evening to give a dry night with clear spells, allowing the temperature to fall to about 7 Celsius, 45 Fahrenheit. The wind will be moderate and from the west.
I don't want to put pressure on you, but this loan of yours is accumulating far too much interest.
Oh, Nigel, son, you don't need Albert squared, honest, you don't.
I've had enough of this bloke trying to strangle our lives. You can tell Ian, I got the money I owe.
Oh, great.
And now I'm going into the Vic to drink a lot.
EastEnders, Monday at 8 on BBC1.
A chance to test your musical knowledge now on BBC1 with Chris Tarrant.
Hello, here we all are with another marvellous audience made up tonight of the clean-living, specially scrubbed youth of today. He's sitting somewhere along the 5th row, and the other 499 of them are the usual scruffy, evil-smelling riff-raff we normally got. Welcome to Pop Quiz, and once again, we're more than well blessed with 2 teams of top pop artists plucked from the charts for their vast expertise in popular music. Well, we put this knowledge to the test with questions dating from the early 60s with the Beatles, the Stones and the Singing Nun, on through the days when Spandau Ballet were #1 in charts, right up to the present day. But before we explore this rich world, let's meet the teams. The first is captained by the singer-bass guitarist who's 50% of level 42, Mark King.